Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to the Secret Healer's Shed. I have been AWOL, and I'm really sorry about that. I always do it, don't I? I say I'm going to be around more, and then I don't make a video for weeks because I get involved in something else. And what I've been involved in is doing some work for a lovely company called Terroma. Now, if the name Terroma seems familiar but you can't quite place where it's from, they are a Bulgarian company who were one of the sponsors of the Beyond the Essential Oil Recipe Summit, for which Gagle and I are extremely grateful. And I'm very proud to see what they've done, actually. So I've done quite a lot of consultation for them. They've put some blends into production that I have designed for them. That will be a little while before those come out. But we've done 12 blends together, emotional blends, for things like anxiety, motivation, intimacy, hope, sleep, jealousy. I can't remember all of them, but they are being produced as we speak. And they're a long way down the line now because the packaging is all done, and we also have a lavender oil on sale. Now, I know that you probably think, oh, lavender oil. I really want you to think Bulgarian lavender oil, because that's what this is. Let me tell you about it. So first of all, look how beautiful they have packaged it. So it comes in this lovely cardboard tube, which is quite substantial sized, as you can see. My rings are all cockeyed. And inside is a stunning bottle with a real bamboo top, and then no labels, people, because labels slick off under your fingers when you're oily. They have screen printed onto the bottle. Isn't that magnificent? You can see all the bits and pieces on the back that you need to know. And I want to show you, because it may or may not sound like I have written it, on the back of the tube it says, at Terroma, we sense Earth's heartbeat. We watch for signals of nature's most perfected chemistry before filling our stills. To capture her breath, we must distill slowly, using water drawn from her own springs. When we show her plants patience and humility, they offer us richer molecules and ultimately more spectacular oils. Some companies simply bottle essential oils. We, on the other hand, perform fragrance alchemy. So I'm quite pleased with that. So that obviously goes back in there, but we're not going to do that. We're going to take the top off, and I can tell you the fragrance is sublime. Now, if you smell a lot of lavender oils, you'll know that a lot of lavender oils smell very different to each other. And this just does not have that top camphoraceous note. It's so smooth. So soft. So I can tell you a little bit about the production, because two weird coincidences, actually. So when I was writing my rose book, I wrote about a particular distillery in Bulgaria. And then another client asked me to go and visit that distillery for something else completely. So I have been to that distillery, and then Terroma have come back and said, well, that's where we sourced it from. And I'm like, no way, I can tell you everything there is to know about that particular distillery. So let me tell you a little bit about it. So first of all, you need to understand the terroir. So in France, we talk about the terroir with wine, really, don't we? That it's that perfect storm of the wind, the rain, the soil, the sunshine, just the amount of acidity in the soil, whatever that chemistry is, makes something exquisite. And so that's the difference between being able to have champagne from the Reims region, and it's not champagne unless it comes from the Champagne region. So the terroir of Bulgaria makes for extraordinary essential oils. And of course we know that in the Rose Valley in Bulgaria there is nothing to compare to their roses and rose oil. Well, frankly, I think the same about their lavender. So I can remember very clearly going to that distillery, and you know that I go to David Austin Roses a lot, and you know there's so many roses there of so many different colours, and there is some scent, but it's not even close to the magnificence of the fragrance you walk into this distillery. It's been distilled for so many days in a row that it is just, the air is completely saturated with the fragrance of rose, and it's heady and almost sickly. It's so sweet. So the lavender oil was due to be distilled about a fortnight after I went, and the guy was telling me that he would be a little bit worried about the fact that there might be contamination from the rose oil over into the lavender. So they had come up with a solution for that, in that they kept a large batch of last year's hydrolat, the hydrosol, lavender hydrosol, and they were going to flush that through the still before they started the distillation, to ensure that the only contaminant that could be in there would be a lavender based pure contaminant. So I thought that was rather lovely. And it's a very, very old distillery. I'm going to put this back. It's way over 100 years old, and it's been in the family that has it now is the same family that had it originally when they first started distilling there. And during the war, obviously, and after the war, then the communist regime changed the country, and it was seized by the communist regime and became a business run for the people. And so it became like a communist thing. And then around about I think 96, if I remember rightly, the same company got it back, and so it's produced oil all the way through continuously for over 100 years. But we can't say it's been in the same family. But when you go through, when you first walk in, there's a massive still, I mean colossal still that they're pouring rose petals into from the top. And that would have been the same one that they would have put lavender in, but I didn't see that, obviously. But there are smaller stills further round. And if you go to the older part of the distillery, there's a beautiful old copper alembic, enormous, great big thing. And you stand on like a little bridge and look down, and you can see the spring water coming up, natural spring underneath it. And that is why that particular distillery was put in that particular place, because it's in the middle of this fantastic region that has this incredible terroir, but also right on top of this very pure, beautiful spring. And so the guy took me round the fields, and he took me particularly to the lavender fields. So what's very, very interesting about lavender, I don't know if you know anything about lavender propagation, but you can grow lavender from seed, or you can grow it from cuttings. If you grow it from a seed, it's a very, very, very slow process. And if you have Provençal organic AOC lavender, that will have been grown from seed. And if you go to Provence and you see the fields, then it's very different to seeing like an English field or indeed a Bulgarian field, because you have like this mottled effect of many, many different lavenders and pinks and purples, because each seed produces a unique plant. But when you take from clones, which is what we do with this particular oil, this comes from clones, they take a cutting, pop the cutting in the ground, eventually the cutting will produce roots, and that becomes a new plant. So why is this important? Well, obviously, many different lavenders create different chemistries. We know that. And so it has to be the same chemistry that goes into each batch all of the time, in this case. So they use these clones to make sure that the chemistry is exactly correct. Now, what I didn't realise was, until I went there, was that you can get the end of the distillation done, and the chemistry may not match up with the quality benchmarks that are put in place. It says it has to have between this much and this much linalool, this much and this much linalool acetate, etc., etc. So from there it goes on to be blended. The problem that they have is the particular lavender species that they use on this to produce this particular oil doesn't have the largest essential oil yield that it could have. It has beautiful fragrance, it has beautiful chemistry, but it's not a great yield. So what they found for a while was when they asked farmers in the area to grow lavender for them, then these farmers were using other species of lavender to kind of get a better yield of essential oil, but that meant that it gave them poorer quality later, and they didn't recognize that it had been done. They couldn't recognize it until they did the analysis of the chemistry, and then that's ruined the distillation, hasn't it? So how they came, the solution that they came to instead was to create a loan service. So what I saw was these hundreds of thousands of cuttings being propagated on that would be given to new farmers for them to start their crop, and they would repay the funds for that out of the revenue they made for their essential oil. I have to just turn my heater off. It's suddenly gone really hot. Flipping menopause. 1 sec. So what we have then is, I've seen these clones all come out, and as I say, what we have is this beautiful blanket of exactly the same colour right across. So when you see these lovely pictures of the lavender fields, you know that they've been made with clones. So what also I didn't recognise, and this is not really relevant to Bulgarian lavender, but just to essential oils generally, it's only after they've done that distillation, that blending, and worked out how much yield they've got based on how much sun they've had, how much rain they've had, etc, 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 then that sets the price. So people who order this lavender oil have ordered it and taken a gamble because they don't know how much the price will be next year. But see, therefore, when you're buying in quantities like that, you have got to be very sure of the quality, haven't you? And I can tell you, nice gamble, guys, nice gamble. That is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Now, when I was in Budapest at the Drops conference, then Rihanna and Lewis gave the most beautiful lecture. Really was beautiful. I was expecting it to be really clinical, and I thought, it's going to be full of chemistry. I'm not going to understand it. But it couldn't have been more further from the truth. It was so simple and yet so perfect for everybody in the room. She said, over and above the chemistry, the safety, all of those things that you read in a book about an essential oil, what's important. How does that make you feel? And how it makes me feel is very, very nostalgic, because that Bulgarian lavender is really the fragrance of my childhood. So I could just want to run through with you, if you will indulge me. I can remember very clearly getting to the porch, opening the front door, which was red wood with very, very bright scarlet with stained glass panels. Would walk in, go into the hall. It's a big Victorian house that we used to live in. Lovely Minton tiles through the hall. So we're going to walk past the lounge, which is to the right, and then past the dining room, which is to the right, the stairs up at the side of us, and then we will go into the laundry. And so the laundry was a lovely room because it was always really cosy, because it had not only the washing machine but also the boiler. So you would be able to smell baking bread, because Mum had always got bread baking on the boiler rising, and clean washing, lovely clean washing, because she used to air everything in there. So I'd done my bags, and then I would go through the kitchen into the extension, which was where Mum's office used to be. And so go into this little nook where the back door was, and the biggest ever photocopier you've ever seen. I mean, if you look at it now, you'd just laugh how big it was. And then through the door into her office, and I can really see everything so clearly when I smell this. It's uncanny, because I haven't really thought about that house for a long time. We moved out of it 35 years, but I can see Mum's desk. We had tremendous desks in our house because Dad was a second-hand car salesman, and they had a big refurbishment of their office. I don't know, maybe 1980, something like that. And they brought in all plastic desks, and Dad was like, right, I'll have in all of those old desks. So we all had oak desks in our bedrooms. So Mum had a beautiful double pedestal one, and so her chair would be in front of it, be another chair beside it, which was where her patient or client would sit and have their fortune told, because she was an astrologer and she read cards. And then next to it is like a big, tall, wing-backed chair, and she covered that in emerald velvet. And I can remember jumping in there and just sort of telling her about my day. And in front of us, so there is a point to this, would be the gas fire. And then there was a big bookcase, and on the bookcase, going from the bottom, very interesting bookcase, the bottom would be I can't remember exactly on the bottom shelf, but the one above that had got her crystal ball and her tarot cards, and the next one up had got trinkets, including like this little tiki doll, like that somebody bought back from New Zealand, and it was like a mahogany colour with mother of pearl eyes, and it was ever such a jolly thing. I used to love looking at it. And then directly above it, all of the time on the next shelf, was, if you look at the colour of my walls, imagine an essential oil bottle that colour, right? It was lavender glass, and in there was her Bulgarian lavender oil. Now, the reason why it makes me smile is I wasn't allowed to touch it. Not allowed at all. So as a teenager, I was just riddled with spots. My sister had horrible skin. I'm sure that she won't mind me saying that. She had really bad acne, and it was exacerbated by her going swimming. But I have always had good skin, except for here. I would just be plagued by these great big zits. So I was continuously nicking the lavender oil to put it on. And in those days, we didn't know about sensitization, so I'd be whacking it on neat. I have to say, it hasn't done me any harm, but I warrant that it's probably not a good idea to do now. And so I put it on my zits, and I can hear it now. My mum would be washing up or doing the cooking, and she's like, you know what you like, if eyes when you're in the back of your head when you're a mother, aren't you? And she used to go, leave it alone, stop it. I know what you're doing, Liz. Leave the bottle alone. That's for the poorly people. So I'll be like, I really want the one in the lavender bottle, because A, it smelled nice, but B, it just was not allowed. So that's why I wanted it. But it did smell the same. And this is the smell of home, honestly. So the reason why I wasn't allowed to use it was because she would say it was for her very poorly people, the people who were very anxious, or the people who had really bad arthritis. And so as we came in the front door, we went past the living room, and people used to wait in the living room while I was watching the telly, and for a while they used to smoke, and so we had to put a sign up. We must have been the only house in the area that had a no smoking sign in the living room. And they'd get up and they'd go in. It'd be like a half an hour or an hour appointment, and they'd be huddled like this. And that's why she started doing aromatherapy in the first place. That these patients were so poorly, and she just wanted a way to look after them. And the Bulgarian lavender became the big thing that she would use for people who were anxious and those who had arthritis. And it's interesting because it always makes me think, when I think of lavender, I always think of a particular trial that I can't find now. Would be very useful to be able to use it in a million different ways. But this trial was on people who had anxiety, social anxiety disorder. So like anxiety on crack, can't answer the phone, can't answer the door, won't answer, can't go outside, really poorly people. And they did brain scans on them. And it was a 6-week trial, as I remember. And I'm pretty sure it was inhalation. It may have been application, but it was definitely lavender oil, which is the important thing. I don't know if it was Bulgarian lavender oil, but lavender oil generally. And They also filled in questionnaires over a period of weeks to say how they self-reported their feelings of anxiety, how they felt that they were able to interact now, how they felt that were they able to sleep better, etc., etc. And resoundingly, everybody said, yeah, I feel loads better. But the interesting thing was the difference in the brain scans. So what had happened with the lavender was that this part of the brain had started off the trial being dark, very little activity at all. But as the trial had continued, it had all lit up the left-hand side of the brain, lit it up brightly. And what they explained was that that was a sign of confidence, that when somebody has anxiety, this disappears, this brightness here. And so they felt that the only thing that they could explain it to was the properties of the lavender, bringing this brightness to the left-hand side of the brain again. And the other thing that makes me think of, obviously I've spent a lot of time these past few months thinking about pain and looking at the neurotransmitters, etc., etc. And when I was at Drops in Budapest, I talked about the amygdala, and I smile because it makes me laugh every time I do it. We talked about how the amygdala thinks everything's like a tiger. So the amygdala is the part that perceives fear. So as you're walking down, imagine you're walking through the zoo, and the brain goes, or the amygdala goes, tiger, 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 tiger. The part of the brain that goes, it's okay, you're in a zoo. There are bars. It's okay. That's called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the VMPFC. And so in a healthy person, the amygdala goes, yeah, okay, I'm all right, should get an ice cream. But in somebody with an anxiety, they go, but what if they get me? What if they get me? What if they get me? And the VMPFC goes, I saw them being fed. They're not hungry. And they go, but what about the lions? Has he fed the lions? Has he fed the lions? And after a while, the reason why it makes me laugh, because when I was in Budapest, I said, it becomes a bit like me and Daryl. I'm going, what about this? What about this? What about this? And he goes, oh, whatever. You're not listening to me. You're just going to worry anyway. I'm just out of here. You just carry on. Whatever, dear. Whatever. Well, that's what starts to happen, you see. The VMPFC doesn't engage so much, and it can't keep the amygdala in check. And so the anxiety gets more and more and more and more. But because the VMPFC is not keeping the amygdala in check, what happens then is the amygdala triggers cortisol to be released, because we need cortisol in a stress response, don't we? And after a period of time, cortisol stops being anti-inflammatory, which is its natural way of doing things, kind of turns on its axis and becomes inflammatory to the body. So not only do we have this anxiety and these feelings of what am I going to do, what am I going to do, the body starts to attack itself and become inflamed. So you can see how those ladies who are sitting in the living room with me, how they walk through all hunched up and worried. You can see how that happened, that the emotional content had turned into a physical content, and they were in a lot of pain. You know, we're talking about a time in the 1980s when potentially these old ladies are not going to leave their husband. They might want to go out to work. They're not allowed to go out to work, you know, and just not, it's a very different existence to the ones that we live today. And you can see how they become very hunched up and in a lot of pain, really, and being desperate to try and find a solution. So then we ask ourselves, okay, so if we know that it's an emotional component, or where do we start? Do we say, right, okay, let's treat the pain of the arthritis first, or do we treat the underlying anxiety? I don't know. But the answer to that is, don't really need to know, do you? Because it's going to do both. Really, really interesting. And so I thought what would be interesting would be to have a look at Mum's book, The Garden of Eden. Because when I was in Budapest with Diana and Manol are the people who have formed Terroma. Diana was talking, actually she was talking to Daryl, not me. He had been to Sofia to play rugby, I think, in about 94, 95, 96. And she'd said, oh, it's so different now. You know, that was the end of the communist regime then. We had nothing, you know, we just hadn't got anything. Anything went, we were just all grabbing at it. It's not like that now. And she was right. The distillery that we went to had actually been seized by the communist government in around about 1950 something. But then has gone back to the same family that it went to all those years ago. And what's really odd was when I look back at Mum's book, which, bear in mind, it's new to you, it's not new to me. I have known it became published in 1994, but she's been working on it since about 1991, I think. If you don't know it, it's all clairvoyantly received information about essential oils, and I find it fascinating to look back. So she says, on the physical level, the oil is chattering. It communicates with other oils very well, and this must be why it blends so well. She did used to use it in ever such a lot of products. I see the colour blue and feel emptiness. Affinity with the heart and robust good health will loosen muscles. But what's interesting to me is the mental. She's put, obviously, an oil to help with stress, but it also bestows an understanding of life's conditions, which can be very boring and repetitive, and the feeling of being on a treadmill of life. Interestingly, considering the country of its origin, I feel it's been used by the proletariat for just this. It adds a spiritual dimension to a mundane existence. And again, it seems to be used of people who wish to practice religion under difficult circumstances. Seems to be able to cover the proceedings with secrecy. It's still evolving, unlike French lavender. Will eventually vibrate on blue, not yellow. So to me, that says that it's going to become more like throat chakra medicine and solar plexus, which indicates it would help in religious, artistic and cultural activities rather than day-to-day communication, which is shown by its yellow vibration. So I don't know if you know this, but Plovdiv, which is the town where I stayed in Bulgaria, is the 2019 European City of Culture. And what does it say? It starts to help in religious, artistic and cultural activities rather than day-to-day communication. It's very odd how that does seem to have been what happened in the area. So, that's my thoughts on Bulgarian lavender oil. If you have got a bottle of lavender oil and do not have Bulgarian lavender, although the company are Bulgarian, distribution is in the States. So I'm going to put the details at the bottom of the screen and urge you to go and get one of these beautiful, beautiful oils and enjoy the fact that the details are not going to slick off under your finger. And yeah, just hope you didn't mind indulging me on my little voyage of exploration through our house with the memories of the Bulgarian lavender oil and those poorly ladies, and how many times they came back because they thought that Mum had really helped them. So, congratulations, Terroma. This is one spectacular product.